Guardians? This is Olympus Alliance. And today we're stepping into one of those decisions that looks simple on the surface, but in reality can completely change how a fight unfolds, because Oya is not just another damage dealer, she is one of those heroes that doesn't chip away at teams slowly. She identifies weakness, pulls it forward, and turns a stable fight into chaos in a matter of seconds. And when a hero works like that, when everything depends on timing, impact, and execution, the way you build her becomes absolutely critical. And that's exactly why today is not just about comparing two talismans, it's about understanding what each one does to her identity, because with Oya you're not just adding stats, you're shaping how she behaves in battle, how she pressures the enemy, and most importantly, how she finishes fights. Now before we even look at the options, there's one thing that needs to be clear, because this is where a lot of players lose value without even realizing it. Talismans are not permanent, they are not something you equip once and forget, they are the only flexible part of your entire build. Everything else you invest into a hero is locked: skins, glyphs, artifacts. Once they're done. But talismans are different, they are your adaptation tool, your response to the fight in front of you. And if you're not using that flexibility, you are simply not getting the most out of your heroes. Wars Alliance on Android. The new Road to Glory event on Huawei App Gallery is a great way to get extra value from your in-game purchases. From April 1st to June 30th, 2026, you can enjoy up to 25% savings by collecting footballs and redeeming them for coupons or physical prizes. For every €1, or equivalent in local currency, spent in eligible games, you receive one football. These footballs can be exchanged for rewards like €10, €20, €60, or €160 coupons, or physical prizes such as Huawei Band 10, Huawei FreeBuds 7i, and Huawei FreeClip. You can also stack multiple coupons in one payment for higher value purchases, and any remaining balance can be used on your next purchase. Footballs are not granted for payments that include Huawei points, and only the cash amount spent counts. To join, simply open the campaign link, download Hero Wars Alliance through Huawei App Gallery, sign in, and continue playing safely. So now let's focus on Oya, a physical attack-based strength hero with a very clear purpose. She hunts the weakest point in the enemy team, pulls it forward, and unleashes a chain of attacks that often ends that target instantly, and that alone tells you something important. She is not about spreading damage across the battlefield, she is about precision, about targeting, about that one decisive moment where everything connects. And because of that, her talisman choice becomes one of the most impactful decisions you can make. So we begin with the Talisman of Prophecy, strength as the main stat and critical hit chance as the secondary, and immediately this feels natural, because strength increases her physical attack, which directly improves her damage scaling, her ability to execute targets, and her overall impact. And then you add critical hit chance on top of that and suddenly every attack carries the potential to spike, to double in damage, to create that exact moment where the fight shifts instantly in your favor. And with Oya, that matters more than with most heroes, because she doesn't need many opportunities, she needs the right one, and when that moment comes, critical hits are what turn a strong attack into a decisive one. But there is something else happening here that many players overlook, because with Oya critical hits are not just about damage, they also trigger healing, which means this talisman is not purely offensive, it actually helps her sustain herself, giving her more time in the fight, more chances to reach that key moment, and more stability when things get chaotic. So the Talisman of Prophecy gives you balance, it gives you burst potential, but also consistency, allowing Oya to hit hard and remain in the fight long enough to do it again. But then we move into the second option, the Talisman of Warrioress, and this is where everything changes, because now we shift away from balance and move into pure aggression, physical attack as the main stat and crushing as the secondary, and this combination creates a completely different version of Oya. Because now instead of relying on critical spikes, you are increasing the power of every single hit. Crushing starts to amplify damage as fights progress, especially when enemies reach certain thresholds, and combined with higher physical attack, this means Oya is no longer waiting for the perfect moment, she becomes a constant threat, every engagement hurts, every chain of attacks becomes more dangerous. And over time she starts breaking through defenses in a way that the first talisman simply cannot match. And this is where the real difference lies. The Talisman of Prophecy gives you controlled burst, moments of high impact that can end fights quickly, but the Talisman of Warrioress gives you pressure, scaling damage, and a much more aggressive presence across the entire fight, and that makes her unpredictable, because now she doesn't depend on a single moment, she becomes dangerous at all times. And this is exactly where most players get it wrong. They look for a single answer, a best talisman, something they can equip and forget, but with Oya that approach simply doesn't work, because both talismans are strong, both have a purpose, and both change how she performs depending on the situation. If you are playing in compositions where critical hits are already supported, where burst damage is the win condition, where you need that early impact to secure the fight, then the Talisman of Prophecy becomes incredibly valuable. It enhances what your team is already doing and increases the chances of that decisive moment happening. But if you are facing stronger opponents, longer fights, situations where enemies don't fall instantly and you need sustained pressure to break through, then the Talisman of Warrioress becomes the better option, because it doesn't rely on chance, it builds damage over time, it scales with the fight, and it turns Oya into a constant offensive threat that is difficult to control. So what you are really choosing here is not which talisman is better, but which version of Oya you need for the fight in front of you, one that delivers controlled burst or one that applies relentless pressure. And that is the mindset that changes everything, because once you start thinking like this, once you stop looking for fixed builds and start adapting your tools to the situation, you begin to see the game differently, you begin to control outcomes instead of reacting to them. So if there's one thing to take from this, it's this: don't lock your talismans, don't limit your options, use them, test them, adapt them, because that is where real power comes from. And now we want to hear from you, Guardians. How are you building your Oya? Are you going for that critical burst that ends fights instantly, or are you leaning into the crushing power that turns her into a scaling threat over time? Have you tested both? Have you felt the difference in real fights? Let us know in the comments and tell us which hero you want us to cover next, because we are just getting started and there is a lot more to break down. Stay tuned, stay sharp. And as always, salute and friendship.